So as Jacob said, next up it is the RLM Racing Bike Sports Championship, second of 2 races today for these cars. And we saw them out earlier on, and it was a convincing win for Josh Smith by 12.5 seconds over the rest of the field in his Radical PR6 on his debut in the Bike Sports Championship. Joe Lockett was that took second place earlier on, and Chris Preen third, also getting the class win. Cars yet to be released, still some of the BMWs from the previous race being recovered, as you can see. Some of those that didn't make it to the checkered flag after various incidents or dramas during the course of that race. So the Bike Sports cars will come out very shortly then, Josh. We can see them in fact being released even as we speak, so right on cue they're coming out, and the grid for this race set by the second fastest qualifying times from earlier on. We'll give you a full run through of the grid in just a moment, but Josh, what do you think we can expect from this race?
Well, it's all hard to look past Josh Smith up front, isn't it? You mentioned his 12-second victory early on, the multiple OSS champion, moving up into the Bike Sports Championship for 2019 and really putting his pace on the board early on. But we saw Joe Stables, didn't we, race him hard until Stables had a car problem. I think Stables is back, he absolutely is, and we saw a great battle between him and Joe Lock before that, and Chris Preen was involved in that as well. There were some great battles earlier, weren't there? We saw that as well. Ash Hicklin and Doug Carter and Mark Bootle battling. Looks like we may be missing Charles Hall again, so he obviously had a bit of a drama in qualifying this morning. Scott Mattellaby looking for a better race. He had a spin, didn't he, earlier in the Class C car, the lower powered cars, the 1 litre cars, rather than the 1300s of the rest of them. Pretty much the other 1 litre car, though, of course, is the Sabre of Stephen Bell. He's there too, and of course Mattel and Bell, as well as being in Class C, they're the only non-radical sports cars on the grid. The Mattel MC41 having its race debut this weekend in the hands of Scott Mattel, multiple race winner and a champion in RGB from a few years ago. And of course Mattel cars very much a contender in the RGB Championship. They looked out the podium just 8 days ago at Brands Hatch, and Scott Mattellaby looking for a good race here. He qualified 8th position, so the car has got good pace to race against these bigger engine cars, but I'm sure it's a bit of a learning experience for him this weekend, Ian.
Absolutely. He won't have had too much time in the car. He'll have done a few test days, but not much more than that. So he will be in a little bit of difficulty from that point of view. Now I can see that Doug Carter's managed to get himself out of position. He's got himself alongside Ashley Hicklin, having filled the space vacated where Charles Hall should have been. So hopefully he'll sort of find his way into the right position for when the race actually gets underway to avoid any penalty. Of course, once again, it's a rolling start. The one to watch, I think, in this race, as it was in the earlier race, is going to be Joe Spencer, isn't it? Because he starts 12th on the grid here, net 11th with the car that's missing, but he came through the field before problems developed later on in the race.
Yes, hopefully they've got that car fixed and he'll be able to race on through the field, as you say, starting there on row 6 of the grid, the sports car champion in Okazaki. But let's have a look at the grid for race 8 of the day.
Josh Smith then on pole position, this grid based on second fastest lap times from qualifying this morning. Joe Lock next to him. Joe Stables back out for race number 2, the reigning champion from last year, and Chris Preen next to him. Charles Hall missing from row 3, so it's Ashley Hicklin on his own. Doug Carter and Scott Mattel. Well, Scott Mattel hoping to get a finish under his belt this time out in the Mattel MC41. Mark Boots and Robert Rees all line up on row number 5 of the grid. Tony Barwell and Joe Spence, the double North West Sports and Saloon Car champion, he's on row 6. Stephen Bell and Andrew Gord, row 7. Adrian Reynard way back on row 8 of the grid alongside Mark Raisin, so he, another one who should come up through the field. And Andrew Kimpton, Ian Charles, they're on row 9. Jeff Farmer and Alistair Smart, row 10. Neil Harris and Sean Peters, the sometime Cockshire Cup racer, and Charles Adrian on 23rd on the grid. They round out the very healthy field for this RLM Racing Bike Sports Championship, Josh.
See a few people asking on the stream how they can get involved in racing with the 750 Motor Club. Well, there's a how to get started page, isn't there, on the 750 Motor Club website, 750mc.co.uk. So after all the racing's finished, head there, show you how to get involved in racing with the club, and it's detailed on every single championship is on the home page as well. So head there at the end of the day and you can find out about all the categories, not just the bike sports we're about to see, but all 20 plus of the 750 Motor Club Championships, and we look forward to seeing you later on in the year.
Yeah, as we say, we've really got a small selection of the 750 Motor Club Championships on display here at Donington Park today. We'll see the majority of them on our live streamed coverage courtesy of Alpha Live during the course of the season, headlined at each meeting though by Club Enduro, so you'll get a full range of championships. But although it's great to watch the live stream, there's no substitute for being in the paddock, getting up close and personal to the cars, and indeed the drivers will be only too happy to tell you about what's going on. This Bike Sports Championship then split into 3 classes. Class A is for tuned motorcycle engines, Class B for production motorcycle engines, and Class C for any motorcycle engines less than 1100cc, and there's weight limits as well to equalise everything out. In my earphones I can hear the engine notes rising because they're coming through Goddard's. The safety car is pulling in and the red lights go on, the red lights go out, and we're off and running, and it's a great start by Chris Preen from the second row of the grid. Joe Locke from the front row was caught napping a little bit there in the green car, but it is Josh Smith once again that has the lead of the race now. From Preen up to second place he goes, and Joe Locke losing a bit of ground there as they all negotiate their way around the first couple of corners. Joe Locke is still there in third position. Fourth at the minute looks to be, I think that's Ashley Hicklin. Joe Stables is in fifth place, so he's lost a position as well as they've gone off the line, Josh.
Through the old hairpin they go. There's Doug Carter leading a whole group of the cars as they go through that corner for the first time. They make their way up towards McLean's. It's Josh Smith leading, but Chris Preen going with him in the Tim Gray Motorsport Run SR3. He's got the 2 PR6s either side of him. Joe Locke right underneath the rear wing of Chris Preen as they turn their way through Coppice Corner. Joe Locke moved into the championship last year after racing saloon cars, racing the Civic Cup, and getting more and more used to the sports cars, the speed of these cars every time out. He won at Snetterton at the end of last year and he's challenging Chris Preen down towards the S's. Couldn't do it. Ash Hicklin, who another driver that improves every time out, running there in fourth place. He's got a good run through the S's. Can he challenge Joe Locke on the run down towards the hairpin? Let's see. He's looking up the inside. Here's another car, another SR3 going up the inside of the PR6 of Joe Locke. They're going to run side by side through the corner. The PR6 is a much smaller car visually than the SR3. The SR3 carries a bit more downforce than the car ahead, but Joe Locke does hold on ahead in third place.
But it's Josh Smith out front then, as he was in the earlier race, and already he's building a good lead over Chris Preen in second place. 1.5 seconds at the end of lap number 1. Chris Preen in second, Joe Locke is third, Ashley Hicklin is fourth, and fifth at the back of that group, the black car with the yellow bodywork you can see is Joe Stables. Scott Mittel though going well, up in P6 in the Mittel MC41R. That's the little 1000cc superbike engine car.
Absolutely, it looks visibly lower than the Radicals as well, doesn't it? That it was chased in there down towards Redgate into the old hairpin. They are now Ash Hicklin using lots of curb on the inside of the corner. The champion from last year is chasing him. That is Joe Stables, who retired in the earlier race. Can Stables challenge on the run up towards McLean's? No, he dives up the inside. Thought he wasn't going to do that, but he didn't make the move. He was too tight on the inside, really, kicking up all the grass. And it's sort of exaggerated by the aero of these cars. It flicks the grass up in the end. Scott Mattel now right on their tail. The two SR3s, they're going to run side by side down the exhibition straight. Let's see, not quite. Ash Hicklin is ahead, but in the slipstream of both the two cars behind. Here comes Scott Mattel. He looks up the inside of Joe Stables, but I think at the end of the straights that car hasn't quite got the speed.
Corner marker just went for a Burton there. That was taken out by Hicklin, I think, and it's flipped up over the two cars behind him. I wonder if Scott Mittel has made changes to the car between these two races, as well as he's perhaps learned a bit about it in that first race. He only did a handful of laps really in that earlier race, but Scott Mittel learning all the time with that car, whereas these Radicals up ahead, well, what there isn't left to know about how he set these cars up, I'm not quite certain. Josh Smith's come through again, and that lead has more than doubled. It has nearly trebled to 4.4 seconds over Chris Preen, now in second place. The gap between Chris Preen and Joe Locke has come down by a couple of tenths of a second, so we need to watch out for that. But once again, we're looking at the number 27 car, the Scott Mittell machine for the former low-cost champion. Then you've got behind them Doug Carter and Mark Boot disputing 7th and 8th, and Joe Spencer just steadily making progress. He's up there to 9th.
Absolutely, into the old hairpin they come. So this is 3 Radical PR6s together. You can visually see the speed that Joe Spencer carried through the corner. He's right underneath the rear wing of Mark Boot as he runs up through Swans Curve in towards McLean's. Is there going to be a challenge here from Spencer? No, he couldn't quite make it. So quick these cars are. The braking zones are so small. Look up front though. Joe Stables was up the inside of Ash Hicklin for 4th place. Meanwhile, the PR6s go through in this battle of 7th that we're watching. Doug Carter still ahead of Mark Boot and ahead of Joe Spencer. They make their way down the exhibition straight, and this is the battle for 4th place. Joe Stables up over the grass on the inside. He's over the gravel through the middle of the corner. He didn't go past Ash Hicklin. Is that going to allow Scott Mittell to challenge though down into the Melbourne hairpin? Not quite. What's happening behind? Doug Carter still there in 7th position, only just though. Could look into the outside is Mark Boot. That's going to allow Joe Spencer to look to the inside, and they're going to be level, and Carter slow off the corner. Was there a bit of a touch there maybe?
I think there might have been, yeah.
And is there going to be a challenge into the Goddard's hairpin this time? Again, Boot looks to the outside of Carter, but they all stay in the same order amazingly.
So here they come then. Doug Carter at the head of this group. Mark Boot just behind him. Joe Spencer, second race in the Bikesports Championship, just behind him. And then the man that's behind them in 10th place on his own rather is number 4, Tony Barwell, having a little bit of a race on his own. These 3 then make their way through Hollywood. Here's Ash Hicklin, who at Fox Yeses didn't give Joe Stables an awful lot of room, as Stables tried to essay a move on the inside line at the first part of the Fox Yeses. Stables is trying to come back to him again. This is the fight for 4th and 5th positions here. Stables, I remind you, the champion from last season, finding his work much more difficult this year, it would seem. Scott Mittell still there in P6 as well. They climb the hill now towards the right-hander at Coppice, and do they all make it through there okay? It looks like they do, and then they'll head down the exhibition straight now. Stables is going to have a look here. No, he tucks back into the toe. Mittell's going to pick up a double toe here. He'll try and draw alongside Joe Stables. Then he pulls back in behind him, and it's single file through the Fogarty S's this time. Stables carries more speed through the corner though, and they head down the short straight towards the hairpin. Stables has a look up the inside. He's got Fully alongside. Well, does he run wide on the exit of the corner? Yes, he does, and that means he's going to lose not 1 but possibly 2 places here. Hicklin goes back through. Can Scott Mittell convert this into P5? It's going to be on the outside line for the Goddard hairpin now, and it's just going to be Joe Stables therefore that hangs on for the moment.
I almost thought that Scott Mittell was going to get past both of them at one point, but no, he couldn't quite do it. In fact, they stay in the same order. It looks like there's a change behind though, because Mark Boot has got ahead of Doug Carter. Joe Spencer still involved in that battle. That's all happening in the background. There's the MC41 of Scott Mittell in its first race weekend here at Donington Park, chasing the 2 Radical SR3s of Ash Hicklin and of Joe Stables. Through the Craner curves they come, down into the old hairpin. They turn right, down a gear into the old hairpin. Search quick these Radicals and the Mittell are through that corner. Probably the quickest car that come around Donington Park through the corners, I would think, through the Craner curves into the old hairpin and that sort of thing. But let's look up at McLean's, because this battle of 4th continues. It's close in front too between Preen and Locke, but here comes Stables. Is he going to challenge? Yes, he's alongside. He's sideways though, so Ash Hicklin on the outside line can carry the momentum through onto the exhibition straight, and he stays ahead. It's Scott Mittell going to challenge again. He's looking up the inside of Joe Stables. He's fully alongside this time though, before the braking zone, and he makes it work. Scott Mittell goes into 5th place. So I guess, Ian, this is his first race for a year as well.
Yeah, he's not done a lot of racing really. He's been focused on preparing cars and running the cars primarily in the RGB Sports 1000 Championship, and I know he and his dad are going to be very busy at Silverstone in a couple of weeks when we've got the Bikesports, the RGB Sports 1000 and the F1000s all on the same bill as it's nose to tail for 2nd and 3rd there. Chris Preen under pressure from Joe Locke. Chris Preen in Class B, Joe Locke in a Class A car, and there's this gap back to the next group which is still headed by Hicklin, now from Mittell and Stables. A penalty being shown to Jeff Farmer. It's a 5-second penalty. That'll be for exceeding track limits, but he's down in 17th place, so it doesn't really have much significance for the overall positions. We have got less than 10 minutes to go of this race, so we're pretty much halfway through.
Absolutely. It's been a great race again, hasn't it, from the Bikesports? Josh Smith might be up the road by some 10 seconds, but behind it is really good stuff from the RLM Racing for this year, Bikesports Championship. Look here, there's Mark Boot. He's very much pulled away from the battle for what is now 8th place. That's Doug Carter ahead of Joe Spencer. Let's look at the battle for 4th place, because Scott Mattel's looking up the inside of Ash Hicklin. That might allow Joe Stables to get the run. It could be 3 wide by the time they get to Coppice Corner. Let's see how they get through there. Hicklin, Stables with a big slide. Is he going to hold on to the circuit? He does. He goes round the outside of Scott Mattel in all of that. So a place gain there in towards Coppice Corner. Stables ahead of Mattel, but Mattel's going to fight back in towards the S's. Can't quite do it. He backs out.
Yeah, and that Stables car doesn't look to be handling as well as it normally does it? I have to say. Few issues there.
Remember, he crashed at the end of last year at Snetterton.
He did.
And I wonder if that car perhaps not handling to his liking since then.
That's right. He did take his dad Richard's car out for one of the races at Snetterton, didn't he? So there is the battle for second once again. Chris Preen in second, Joe Locke in third, the former Civic Cup racer, making his way out of the Goddard hairpin to start another lap.
Stables gained 2 places in half a lap now. He's got past Ash Hicklin. Maybe that car isn't working how he would like, but he is up into 4th place now. Can he escape from Ash Hicklin? But Hicklin's looking to the outside as they turn in towards Redgate. In front, Joe Locke runs out wide. He challenges Chris Preen for 2nd position. So Preen and Locke, we're watching, going down the crane of curves. The SR3, the car that carries more aero than the PR6, therefore isn't as slippery down the straights that Joe Locke. And of course, we should mention that Chris Preen is the leader of Class B here for the standard engined cars rather than the tuned car that Joe Locke is in.
Meanwhile, Josh Smith still leads this race. He does so by 13.5 seconds now after just 6 laps of racing. So that is an astonishing rate of progress for the 3-time OSS champion, the 2013 Castle Combe Sports and GT champion. That was the first year that Bridgewater College started to run that car for him. But back to this battle in hand, and Joe Stables has just put a bit of daylight between himself now and Ash Hicklin, who still has a mirror full of Scott Mittel as they make their way down to the left-hander at Fogarty SS with 7.5 minutes of the race left to go.
I think this is probably the best we've seen from Ash Hicklin, isn't it? He's having a great first weekend of the season. Meanwhile, the battle for second, Chris Preen is keeping Joe Locke at bay, who was physically right underneath the rear wing of Chris Preen's car there. The front of Locke's car and the rear of Preen's car were as close as you would like without contact. Preen goes deep into Goddard's but gets the car turned in and keeps ahead of Joe Locke. Locke was so close to the back of Preen's car, you could hardly see the small PR6. He darts out though of the slip trim. He's up the inside this time into Redgate Corner and he goes through. Finally, Joe Locke makes the move, and they've got to watch out because catching a huge rate of knots is Joe Stables. He was 2 seconds quicker than them on that last lap.
So he is certainly closing in. Joe Spencer has just done his best lap of the race in 8th position. He's not really made the progress I thought he might do during the course of this race, as he's still continuing to learn that new car to him, the Radical PR6. So he's another driver to be learning a new car this season. As we watch, therefore, Joe Stables going through, and he is taking a lot of time out of the leading two, isn't he?
Damage to the rear of the car as well. You can see the bodywork flapping about there. That's not slowing him down. He's done a 1 minute 31.5, which on the latest lap was quicker than anybody else that it did on that lap. And the only person that's gone quicker than that all race is the leader, Smith, and Stables is now challenging Chris Preen. This is a battle of a Class B lead as well, and he goes straight through. He took ages to get past Ash Hicklin, and one corner and he's through into the leader Class B ahead of Chris Preen.
Yeah, made that look very easy, didn't he, did Joe Stables? So, can he now catch Joe Locke? Well, there's not going to be an awful lot of a gap that he needs to make up here. They're making their way back up towards the Goddard's hairpin again with 5 3/4 minutes left to go, plus 1 lap in this race. So, several laps still for Joe Stables to do anything about about Joe Locke. Not necessarily going to do anything about Josh Smith. There they go over the line. The gap between them now is 1.3 seconds.
Change in the background into Goddard. Scott Mattel got past Ash Hicklin, but Hicklin's going to challenge down towards Redgate, is he? Let's have a look out the window. Hicklin dives up the inside of Scott Mattel, but Mattel holds on. So Scott Mattel in 5th position now. Let's see what sort of lap times he can manage in that MC41. Meanwhile, here's Joe Stables heading down towards the old hairpin. He's in 3rd position. He's chasing Joe Locke. The gap is 1.3 seconds between between the pair of them, and Stables was a second quicker than Locke on that last lap, so we should have a good battle here, I think, for second in the closing stages.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's closing in at a rate of knots, isn't he? So Locke and Stables almost nose to tail, about 3 car lengths between them as they turn their way through Coppice Corner this time. Josh Smith still 14 seconds clear of the rest of them though, so he's not really going to figure in this, the 30-year-old from Weston-super-Mare. It is Joe Locke then that has the lead of this particular battle at the moment from Joe Stables, the champion from last year, our Class B leader in this race. They're heading down towards the Melbourne hairpin. Is Joe Stables going to try and move here? No, he's not. He's too far back to make that work. We've seen already during the course of today what can happen if you are too late on it. Just lapping one of the back markers. I think that's Charles Adrian, isn't it, that is going, or has gone already a lap down to Josh Smith, of course. Leaders then have gone through, or the leader has gone through. Here's the battle for second, up and over the line, and the gap has come down to about 6.5 tenths of a second now between Joe Locke and Joe Stables.
Both of them just set their personal best laps of the race, so pushing one another on to go quicker than ever before in this Locke and Stables. Meanwhile, we've lost one car from this race. Doug Carter, who was going well inside the top 10 early on, has retired, so 20 cars continue. Out of the old hairpin comes second and third Joe Locke and Joe Stables. They climb the hill. In fact, because they're pushing each other so hard, they are actually lapping quicker than Josh Smith, the leader, and a dive up the inside from Joe Stables. He took so long, didn't he, to pass Ash Hicklin early on, but now he is pushing past the cars as quickly as he catches them, so up into second place. And immediately he's pulling away from Joe Locke.
Yeah, so nothing there that Joe Locke could do to keep Stables behind him. I'm sure there's a pull in there to be made somewhere, but I won't. Down towards the left-hander at Fogarty then goes Joe Stables. He's 14 seconds behind the race leader. Surely even at the rate he's going, Joe Stables can't make that up in the 3 minutes plus 1 lap that remain.
And I suspect Josh Smith is running to a pace now as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's lapping in the 132s. His best lap of 129.43, not even as quick as he went in the earlier race.
So there's Joe Locke making his way out of the Melbourne hairpin. Chris Preen's dropped a few seconds back, so Joe Locke should be okay for a podium, I would think. They make their way out of the hairpin then. In fourth position is still Chris Preen. Scott Mattel's not really making any inroads into that gap to Chris Preen. Let's see what time Mattel's in. He's doing 1:33, yeah, so not quicker than the cars ahead. Ash Hicklin, he is pulling away from there, a couple of seconds to Hicklin. Mark Boot, he's catching Hicklin, so 6th to 7th the gap coming down. Mark Boot catching Ash Hicklin, and Joe Spencer's getting quicker all the time, so he's going quicker than the pair of them. A 1:32.6 from Joe Spencer. He's 3.5 seconds behind Mark Boot. Mark Boot's about 3 seconds behind Ash Hicklin, but we'll see if those 3 cars can come together before the end of the race to complete the top 10. That's Tony Barwell and Robert Rees.
Meanwhile, Josh Smith has been plucking his way past the back marks. He's just gone past Neil Harris. The next car is the man in 17th that he needs to try and lap. That is Mark Grayton, who's out there in number 30. That's the yellow and white SR3 that you can see. I imagine he'll make pretty short work of him as they head down towards the Melbourne hairpin. Yes, he does. So Josh Smith puts a lap on the car in 17th position, and he will have 2 more laps to go at the end of this one, because we've got less than a minute and a half to go in this race now. So Josh Smith, who started racing with the 750 Motor Club with a Phoenix way back sort of 14 years ago now, that would be, which is a frightening thought from my point of view. He comes up and over the line then, looking well in control of this race with, as I say, 2 laps to go now. Meanwhile, how's it looking for second? Well, Joe Stables has pulled out quite a gap now over Joe Locke. What is the gap between them? It is now, as the screen flicks to 2.5 seconds, just over 2.5 seconds between them.
But Joe Stables is only 8.5 seconds behind Josh Smith all of a sudden.
True.
Josh Smith taking it so easy. He hasn't got a problem, has he?
Well, he has been going past those back markers.
Yeah.
I think he's probably just been taking it ultra cautious past those slower cars, hasn't he?
But it kind of makes you wonder, perhaps, because another personal best from Joe Stable, 1:30.6, only a second slower than what Josh Smith done early in the race. Whether Joe Stable perhaps can take it to Josh Smith this season, which will be good to see. Meanwhile, Scott Mattel has just gone a second quicker than he's been all race. He's really getting the hang of that car now. at 1 minute 31.67. He's less than 3 seconds behind Chris Preen, and maybe as Scott Mattel gets more and more used to that machine, gets the setup tuned in, but that car could become a factor for overall podiums.
He's found a second and a quarter since qualifying, so that's not bad going, is it? And yeah, I absolutely agree. At the right circuit, I think it certainly will be a podium contender.
Meanwhile, the battle between Mark Boot and Joe Spencer is getting closer. As again, Spencer, he's now on a 1:32.09, so he's getting quicker and quicker as well, because that sort of pace isn't that far off Joe Locke. So I think Joe Spencer is certainly going to be a podium contender come later in the year, and he's only a couple of seconds behind Mark Boot now as well. So Joe Spencer, he's gone a full second quicker than what he, actually nearly 2 seconds quicker than he done in the earlier race.
Last lap board has gone out, and the gap between the two leaders is now 7.64, so it only come down by just under a second that time. Smith in the 1:32s, Stables in the 1:31s that time through. We're into the last 2.5 miles of this race. Locke and Preen, they're separated by about 5 seconds in third and fourth, but here's what we need to keep an eye on. It's Scott Mittel. He was less than 2 seconds behind Chris Preen then at the start of this lap. He's got one of the slow cars, that's Sean Peter, I think, in the Radical, obviously, to try and get his way past, but Scott Mittel looking good here for at least 5th position as he makes his way through the old hairpin.
Looks so different to the Radicals too, doesn't it? Single seat version of the sports prototype machinery we have in the Bike Sports Championship is that Mattel, and there is Scott as he turns his way right through the McLean's corner, climbs the hill up towards Coppice on the brakes there, gets the car turned in. Of course, first time he drove with real aero. The RGB cars, of course, don't have rear wings, don't run on slick tyres either, well, as they do here. Meanwhile, though, we are waiting our another double race winner this week today here at Donington Park. Ian Josh Smith makes his way out of the Melbourne hairpin. Yeah, he does indeed. Not all that far ahead of Joe Stables. He's also making his way out of the hairpin now then, and he's going to be up to the line, and it's a great start to the season in the RLM Racing Bike Sports Championship for Josh Smith, because he's had 2 wins from 2, a tremendous effort from him. We'll see the winning margin in a minute as it flashes up on the screen, 5.5 seconds, not as big as in the first race, but I think possibly he was driving within himself there. 3rd place goes the way of Joe Locke, then he goes across the line now. 4th is Chris Preen, 5th is Scott Mittel. A great effort for that Class C car, so he wins Class C. Joe Stables having won Class B. Top 6 is going to be rounded out by it's going to be Ashley Hicklin, but Joe Spencer gets 7th place away from Mark Boot on the line, so that's the red car just getting ahead of the black car as they came out of the Goddard hairpin up to the line, and Joe Spencer nipped 1 place ahead on the final lap. 100th of a second he beat Mark Boot by across the line, so yep, Joe Spencer improving all the time, as was Scott Mattel. 2 drivers having their first race weekend in the Bike Sports Championship, and they'll only improve as the season goes on, I'm sure. So don't count Josh Smith as a champion already. There's many rounds to go, of course, in the Bike Sports Championship. We've got some triple headers, as we did last year, during the course of the season. As Ian said, I think it was Silverstone up next on the national circuit. It's a very different track, a much shorter circuit, so that traffic will come in play there. It's only about, what, 12 days, isn't it, to the Silverstone race meeting, which usually is an exciting one. And then after that, it's a completely different change of scenery again, because it's Anglesey at the beginning of June, a very much more technical circuit, not so much a power circuit, certainly here as here at Donington Park and Silverstone is. And then after that we get the rest of them on live stream coverage, I think Silverstone, Alton Park and Snetterton. So we shall look forward to that. It'll be a while since the Bike Sports have been to Anglesey, so that should be a new experience for a lot of the runners, so I'm sure they're looking forward to heading off to the Welsh coast. Yeah, so pretty strong weekend for Josh Smith, of course, but I mean, Joe Locke, I'm sure he'll be fairly happy with his 2 results from the weekend. 2 Class A second places and a 2nd and 3rd place overall as well. Cars make their way then down towards the podium. Josh Smith, Joe Stables and Joe Locke in the podium positions. They were indeed ahead of Chris Preen, who took 4th spot. Scott Mattel, our Class C winner, in 5th position, and Ashley Hicklin, Joe Spencer, Mark Boot, Robert Rees and Teddy Barwell rounding out the first 10 finishers, just about a minute separating those. Alistair Smart was 11th, Ian Charles 12th, Jeff Farmer, in spite of a penalty, was 13th, and Andrew Kimpton 14th, and Andrew Gord was 15th.
Stephen Bell 16th, so the Sabre Escala getting home this time. Mark Grayson was a lap down in 17th, so too Neil Harris and Sean Peters and Charles Adrian as well, and Doug Carter was a non-finisher. So that's Bikesports racing. They're back out, as Josh says, in just 12 days' time at Silverstone. We've got our leading drivers already making their way out of their cars, and they'll be shortly climbing up the steps to the podium, which is where I can see already Jacob Harris eagerly waiting to talk to drivers for the penultimate time this afternoon here at Donington Park. Still one more race to come for you, though. We'll look forward to the low costs in a moment.
See lots of people on the live stream saying how much they like that car of Scott Mattel, absolutely flying out there. And as you were saying, Ian, there's a lot of people are saying that we think that car is one for the podium.
Absolutely right. So, Bikesports race comes to an end. They're all heading back into Parc Fermé. Some of them trying to sneak into their garages, which they shouldn't really be doing, because they have to go through their post-race scrutineering checks. And apart from the top three, who they do have to go through their post-race scrutineering checks, but first they have to speak with Jacob as well. So we'll hand down to him in just a moment. I can see drivers climbing up the steps now, so it's time to hand you down to Jacob.
Down here on the podium, we are just about to receive Josh Smith, winner of that race, and in fact a double winner today. Mr. Smith should be coming around the corner in a few seconds. I'm hearing in my ear that he's having a few photographs behind me, so we'll just let that take its course, and then he'll be over to have a chat with us here on camera and for all the spectators around the track. Make sure you keep them warm if you are still with us here today. I'm starting to feel the chill in these short sleeves. And here we are, Mr. Josh Smith. Congratulations on yet another win.
Yeah, it was good. It'd be nice to have, obviously, someone to tussle with a bit more, but we'll take the win and we'll take the points, and we'll prep up and we'll move back on to Silverstone in a couple of weeks.
Just how do you get yourself that far ahead of the field?
Trying hard. I'm pretty tired. Could do with going to sleep soon, but no, again, the boys at the college have produced another fantastic car, and it's easy to drive when you've got a car that wants to go round corners, you know, and they spend hours and hours in the workshop getting it right, and it was right again.
Josh, thanks for talking to us. Congratulations on your win. Right, I can see the low costs getting ready on the grid just over there. I'm not sure if we've got another interview to go to before they start. We have Joe Stable? Joe Stables, and there he is. Joe, winner of Class B, talk us through it.
It was a tough race. I mean, I got held back at the start by Ashley. He just got the start on me, and he had the speed down the straights, and I could catch him in the corners, but couldn't get the speed at the straights to catch him in the turning. So eventually, I made the move and managed to make my way through to the second place.
Is that a fight you expect to see running the course of the season?
I would like to. Yeah, it was a good race, so bring it on.
Glad to hear it. Thanks for talking to us, Joe. Congratulations on your win. Right. There may be one or two more interviewees here. Chris has disappeared behind the screen to fetch someone, anyone. The low costs are just forming up on the grid. The last couple of cars getting round the last hairpin. But I believe we're going to wrap up here and head back to the grid. Apologies to any class winners who we didn't get a chance to speak to. But we're going to go back into the racing now for our last race of the day, and that's the second of the low-cost races.